Hello and welcome to Arsenal Domination, where I'm going to discuss the hopefully imminent appointment of Andrea Berta as Arsenal's director of football. We know the deal is done. We know the deal's been done for around 3 weeks now. But as usual, we're waiting for Arsenal to announce officially his arrival at Arsenal. I'm actually re-recording this video. I optimistically recorded this 2 weeks ago, hoping that the announcement would be made during the international break. And I still think it will probably be done before Fulham, which is why I'm going to put this video out now. I think sort of it works from a PR perspective, doesn't it? You know, Arsenal back in action after the international break. Little bit of frustration, understandably, that we're not in FA Cup action this weekend. So you announce it on something like the Monday before the first Premier League game, and you get a bit of a feel good factor. That will, I imagine, will be what they'll be looking to do. But either way, Andrea Berta is coming in, and I just wanted to take a bit of a look at sort of what's in his in tray, what he's going to have to deal with, because he's got a lot of work to do, despite the fact that Arsenal, I think, are generally speaking well positioned for success. So I just wanted to have a look at that. And I think the first thing in his in tray is definitely about striking a relationship with the other directors, but also, and I think most importantly, with Mikel Arteta himself. Arsenal see this relationship as sort of a two-way thing where both are equal. And I think that's probably the most sensible approach to take it. You know, the most open and transparent sort of version of where you see this is in the NFL. And I think you still see the most successful franchises, generally speaking, have a lot of respect between the general manager, or in this case, the director of football, and the manager or head coach. I think them being able to get on really well is important. Understand and develop a shared vision, but also one where they can argue against each other. They can constructively criticise each other. And I think whatever you think of Edu and Mikel Arteta, that was something they were able to do. They clearly got on and they clearly challenged each other. And you can sort of see the success within where Arsenal were at the time, but they brought together. Yes, of course, there were misses. Yes, of course, there were mistakes. Find me a club that doesn't ever make mistakes. It's very, very rare that such a thing happens. So I think those two sort of striking that relationship early is going to be fundamentally important for Arsenal. And then after that, I think timing-wise, I think it will be a circumstances as to which one they do first, because I think all three of these are going to have to dual run, if three things can dual run. And if indeed I stop the list at three, because I haven't really planned this, it's just my thoughts as they sort of occur to me. But all of these things are sort of going to have to happen simultaneously. And I think the three major areas are going to be: who are we going to sign, who are we going to sell, and how are we going to keep the players that we have here tied down. As I say, we've spoken originally about Arteta and Berta developing that relationship and friendship between each other and a shared understanding. I think that shared understanding will largely be there. Mikel Arteta will have been involved in the hiring process. He will have been involved in the sign-off for it. I doubt he'll have had the final say. That would be bad for Arsenal if he has. I don't think the manager should ever have the final say about who the director of football is, but should certainly be involved. We saw it recently at West Ham, where the director of football manager didn't get on. It worked terribly. We saw it at Liverpool, where people left and were replaced, and Jurgen Klopp didn't have that same sort of trust or relationship with them, and things were a little bit more difficult. Not disastrously, Liverpool corrected it fairly quickly, but it did impact them slightly. And all of that then leads into these other aspects. So let's deal with signings first, shall we? Arsenal will obviously need to go out and acquire some new players. Two of the signings we made last summer were loan signings, because Arsenal were unable to land their targets and didn't really feel they could either get their sort of second, third choice, or didn't feel their second, third choice were of the right calibre, for a variety of reasons. Some players were very happy where they were. It was a sort of, in many ways, a shortened transfer window because of the international tournament. We didn't see many big transfers happen in the summer, which is quite unusual. And Arsenal, I've spoken about this before, I think have a slightly restricted FFP situation this season. This summer, I think, will be less of an issue. There'll be some players playing in the FIFA World Club Championship, or whatever they're calling it. The window's going to be closed during that tournament, but I don't think that necessarily, needs to be the massive big deal for Arsenal. I think they can still work on deals. They just won't be able to register them, so no major problem. Um, and we sort of January market sort of be hotter than usual as a result of a sort of slower summer transfer window. So I think money's going to be there, and I think the player movement's going to be there, and Arsenal will go big. Obviously, number one priority is going to be a striker. Gary Jesus is definitely out till Christmas in all likelihood. Kai Havertz has done well. I think he'd have got 20 plus goals this season, but he's clearly upgradable. And Arsenal definitely need a striker to come in. They will also need another forward to come in. I think the right hand side to some extent sort of fixed now with the emergence of Ethan Nwaneri, is back up to Saka / Odegaard. But the left wing is going to have to be an area. I talk about these being dual track, but does Trossard leave? If so, he'll need replacing. But another player will need to come in there as well, to sort of improve that left-hand side. I think Martinelli sort of similar to Havertz, good player, really good player. But if he's in your squad and coming off the bench, it shows how good your squad is. And I think he's a starter that could be upgraded. So I think there are two areas that Arsenal will sort of look at immediately. With Raheem Sterling's loan obviously not going to be increased, sort of acted upon. He will return to Chelsea. Then there's the midfield, Jorginho and Partey, both likely to leave. I'd like Jorginho to stay ideally on a 1-year extension, but I don't think that's going to happen. I'm not against Partey staying, but I think he probably doesn't become the starter next season. I do worry about him when he's not playing regularly. So I think they're both likely to leave. That will leave Arsenal needing a couple of replacements in there. Zubimendi, Arsenal still seem very confident he's coming in. Berta, I'm sure we'll know him well from his time in Spain. And probably another one's going to have to come in unless Miles Lewis-Skelly or Zinchenko sort of come in there. I'd like to see a slightly more attacking number 8 option come in for when we're sort of chasing the game and need something. I've spoken about the likes of Eze, but maybe Naipan is that answer. As well as sort of a squad player, as a sort of option to change things up later on in games if Arsenal really need a goal as an extra attacking threat without massively undermining the balance. But there's a couple of midfielders there. So you're looking probably at 4 players coming in, possibly 5 depending on departures. Defensively, I think we're fine numbers-wise, but again, that will depend on who will leave. I mean, Kieran Tierney we know is going to go, but I think you can shed a defender thanks to the emergence of Miles Lewis-Skelly anyway. But obviously, if any others leave, you're going to have to look to replace them. And we're going to need a new backup goalkeeper. So we're looking at sort of 6-7 players coming in for Arsenal, depending on departures. But Arsenal, as I say, I think will have a significant war chest, but they are going to want to add to that. And they're going to want to shift a couple of players on. I've spoken about the 2 loans. They're clearly not going to be extended. That's apparent. Trossard possibly an option. Jorginho and Partey, as I say, leaving. That will clear some wage budget, but not generate any sales. Reece Nelson, is he an option? He's got an injury at the moment. Does that affect his real sale value? Sambi Lokonga, Sevilla don't take up the option. We'll get some money in for Tavares, of course, because that's an obligation to buy. And then there's Zinchenko and Kivior that we could be looking at moving on. Fabio Vieira, another one, he will return from Porto in all likelihood. There's no buy option there. So they're the options. I don't think, I think if you lose all of them, you're looking around the £100 million mark. Not insignificant, very helpful from FFP. And a lot of those players, if I'm talking about selling, you probably only need to replace 2, maybe 3 of those. But that will need looking at. And then finally, Arsenal will have the contracts as well. Contract extensions have started under Ato. And the current regime for Gabriel, Bukayo Saka, Martin Odegaard have all started contract talks. That is really promising. Arsenal will need to carry on with those. Saliba, I think, is the one I'd be most concerned about signing. I think Real Madrid is a big draw for him. It's somewhere I think he will have always wanted to play, and they will be coming calling. But hopefully we can get one more contract for him. But I think that also needs looking out fairly quickly, as I say. He will have to get on quite quickly with all 3 of those things. But I think the good news is that Arsenal will have transfer plans in place already. He will have a chance to review them in the coming month. He'll have time to start developing those relationships. And I think he will come in with, despite the obvious disappointments this season, well placed to take Arsenal forward and to build on what's already there and to build on work that is already happening. And I think sort of his big name presence that he has and that kudos he has in the game will really help him to do that. So there we go. Berta with a big job to do, but building from a really, really high and good platform. And I think the future remains bright for Arsenal Football Club. But I think they're the three sort of areas that are high on Berta's to-do list, and I really look forward to him being announced, hopefully very soon, which is why I've putting this video out now, because I can't wait any longer. I'm too excited to see him arrive. And as I say, it'll be very interesting to see what he does this summer and beyond. Thanks very much for listening. Do let me know what you think Arsenal's priority should be, or Berta's priority should be when he gets here. As I say, I think my number one is building that relationship with the manager and then going from there. But the other things are very, very important too. Anyway, that's all from me. I will speak to you in the week because, of course, Premier League action returns. And thank you again for listening. I'll speak to you all soon. Thanks. Bye.